We'll call to order the meeting of the Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board of Thursday, December 2nd, 2021. Present at the front table to my far left is Jessica Batali, a voting member. Seated next to Jessica is Ed McGargy, a voting member. My immediate left, Bill Malone, our solicitor. Far right, Margie Buchanan, the young lady that keeps us all in. Next to Margie is Kelly Kirk, the queen of code enforcement in the township. Sorry, Kel. Next to Kelly is Jesse Poynton, a voting member. My right, Bill Rhodes, a voting member. My name is Robert Cade. And before we begin, Bill, would you please lead us?
Sure. Please rise if you can and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
I apologize for starting late tonight. We were in executive session discussing a legal matter that we'll address after we hear this case. We're going to call this case and then address the legal matter. So our first and only case tonight is Z21-31, Empirical Finance LLC, doing business as Alpha Architect, equitable owner of 19 East Eagle Road, PA, DC folio number 2203-00811100, who seeks a variance from the provisions of section 182707 to allow office space with no dedicated off-street parking, where one space for each 200 square feet of floor area is required. Property is zoned C3 and located in the 3rd ward. Who do we have for that? George Lavin, right? Yes. Hey, George.
Mr. Kane, before we start, I will tell you I have reviewed the documentation provided and standing is appropriate, so we do not have to go through the deed and agreement of sale.
Okay.
Thanks, Billy.
Can I take my mask off to talk?
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, everybody here?
Good.
I'll try to be real brief and quick here. I'm representing Empirical Finance that trades as ETF Architects under some various trade names, but they are essentially a financial services firm that is looking to buy the property, I think now affectionately known as the Rock up in the middle of Oakmont on Eagle Road. I will have two witnesses. I'll have Jack Vogel, who works for ETF Architects, and he'll talk about what the company's going to do with the property, why they want to use it, and some of the parking issues. We also have Paul Brown from Grace Chapel here tonight that can talk about essentially why the property is being sold, and we are in the process of trying to negotiate a parking lot lease with Grace Chapel, where we've got most of the details worked out to lease 30 parking spots just to make sure we meet the parking requirements for an office there. We have one clause we're still trying to finalize and just ran out of time before the meeting tonight.
George, you're going to ask us to consider those spots as part of the application, right?
Yes, yes. And you know, I didn't count the spots, but I think we have enough spots from a public parking lot standpoint anyway. Okay. That may justify the use, and so that's where we are. But okay. Essentially, they want to use it as an office. They have a minimal amount of employees, probably 10, maybe a dozen. Minimal amount of guests. They're a financial services firm. The problem with the property, and I've got some photos in the exhibits I can show you, but it's basically landlocked. You can't get. There's a small grass plot in the back of the property that you can't get to because it's blocked off by the township lot, and there's no parking in front, as everyone I think knows. But we need approval or a variance for additional off-street parking. Number one, the sale of the building is contingent on that, and secondly, we need some relief, either from the board or through a lease with Grace Chapel to continue to meet the parking requirements into the future. So,
what kind of financial services do they provide?
They essentially manage and build ETFs, and we'll have Jack explain that in more detail. It's a little bit over my head. I thought they were more a software company, but we'll have him explain that in detail. But I do have some exhibits. Do you want me to run through some of the, do you have them with
Yeah,
you?
why don't
I did
you-
mark the application as A1.
You pre-marked them, right?
Yes. Okay. I have the full application. But I didn't bring it.
We have copies. That's fine.
We have copies.
Here, I'll trade it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take that.
You have, I really need to see.
Well, they're all separate, so I'm just gonna, so what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna take a one like that and trade that. And it's all set right there.
Since we didn't have that. Yep.
Let me just, as a quick overview, let me just ask you to flip at least halfway back to the section marked A3. It's a white sheet, and it's exhibits for Section 6, which is basically an overview of the building and the parking in there.
Right, and just so we know,
Yes.
we have the application marked as A1. A2, which we don't have to address, has to do with the standing issues, but just for clarification.
Yes,
That's
yes.
the documentation that showed
Yep,
the equitable ownership of the
Yep,
property.
correct.
So I just wanted to make sure we had that on the record. I would suggest it be admitted. And then we're on to A3, which is your exhibits for Section 6.
yes. And if you just want to flip through them quickly, I will explain what I'm trying to show in them. The
Yeah,
first
you
one
want to
is,
identify them, so let's identify
Yeah.
all the exhibits.
okay.
And then we'll admit them.
Sure.
And we'll move
Okay,
from there.
perfect. The Exhibit A3 is a series of overhead photos from Google Maps or Google Earth.
George,
Yes,
just, again, sorry, I just want to make sure we're handling things so we have a clean record here. A3 starts with the cover page of exhibits.
correct.
Identifying exhibits A3A through A3I.
Yes, correct.
So they're not marked A3A through A3I. So A3A
The first one, be A3A.
is the
right.
overhead. A3B
B. Yep,
is a frontal view of
That's
the outside of the
correct.
property. A3C is another aerial, looks like a Google Maps of
That-
the area in general.
yep,
A3D is a second aerial showing the availability of spaces at Grace Chapel.
correct.
A3E shows the former township building with metered spots,
Correct.
including handicap spots. A3D. F.
F.
Sorry, A3F is an aerial of the Oakmont parking lot. A3G is another view of the
That's
Oakmont lot, oh, this is the Oakmont
the
South
Oakmont
lot.
South behind Wagner Real Estate. And,
A3H is metered spots on Eagle Road.
yep,
And A3I is an aerial of metered spots on Darby Road, south
Yes.
of Eagle Road.
yep. Some metered and some
Did
unmetered.
I correctly
Yes.
identify those exhibits?
Absolutely.
Do you have any additional exhibits? I mean, you
That
can
that
always
is
add,
it. No, that's really it.
And I assume you want those all admitted?
Yes,
Okay, they're admitted.
okay. First, turn into A3A. That's just an overhead shot of the area. It's essentially the triangular area between the two sides of Darby Road and Eagle Road. You can see the five-sided building right here in the middle is the Rock, which is the property that we're trying to purchase. A3B is just a front view of the same property. It's essentially four of the standard, 3.5 to 4 of the standard width properties in that area. And it does cover a lot of that block. The overhead, A3C, actually is intended to show all the available parking lots. This right here is the Rock. The Oakmont, if you want to call it north parking lot, is right here. Grace Chapel is basically adjacent to the building, as well as the old township building. And then what I'm calling Oakmont South is further down Darby Road behind Wagner Real Estate. So that shows, you know, all the parking lots are within 2 blocks of walking distance of the building. To flip through, the overhead of Grace Chapel, A3D, shows that there are 66 spots in that lot available, plus some handicap spots. A3E is the old township building lot. That has 19 metered spots, plus some additional handicap spots, and some that they lease to, just lease straight out to some building occupants there. The Oakmont parking lot, which I'm calling Oakmont North, is further up Darby Road towards Ardmore Avenue. That has 48 numbered spots, plus handicap spots. Oakmont South, A3G, has 34 numbered spots, plus some handicap spots. And then the last 2 exhibits, although they're not really applicable to the zoning code, I just have them here to show you that there are 13 metered lots on both sides of Eagle Road in front of the building. And on Darby Road, there's another 17 parking spots. So there is a lot of parking there, but not, I believe it fills up more at night than in the daytime, and the office use would be primarily daytime use, pretty much no evening or weekend use. So I think the number of spots are sufficient alone for the office, but we are also, as the application portrays, trying to work out a lease, and we're very close to doing that with Grace Chapel, to be able to lease and have access to parking on some of their parking lot. So that's really it that I wanted for an opening. What I'd like to do now, if it's okay with the board, is to ask Paul Brown from Grace Chapel to come up here, and I'll step out of the way and ask him some questions about what they're doing and see what he can tell you.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great.
Right in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and the capacity in which you appear for the board, please?
Paul Brown, co-chair of Grace Chapel's board.
Go ahead, George.
Paul, just in general, you said co-chair of Grace Chapel's board. What sort of functions, or what does that entail? Just to help the board understand what your duties or your role is there.
The Grace Chapel's board, we're the governing body in the eyes of the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
For Grace Chapel, I am co-chairman. There's another co-chairman. We're co-equal. Is that good enough?
Yeah, yeah. What sort of, how long have you been chairman of the board or on the board at Grace Chapel?
I've been on the board for 6 years. I've been co-chairman for 2.
Okay.
It only seems like 3.
Let me just in general ask you to describe why, first what the rock was used for, and then I guess why you're selling it at this point in time.
We use the Rock as a non-church meeting space. There's some people are more comfortable to come to a building that is not a church. We had 2 groups that met, Grief Share and a cancer support group that reached out to the broader community. And we found that people were more comfortable to come to a non-church building, so we used the Rock for that. We also used it for our youth groups. They're really hard on buildings, and we preferred to keep them out of the out of our main building. We also used it for small group meetings, where a more informal setting was desirable. That's it, pretty much.
All right. As far as the Grace Chapel parking lot,
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
didn't answer your question about why we're selling it. We're selling it because we found that we were not using it to capacity. And so as part of a cycle of reevaluation, we decided that we would offer it for sale. And if it sold, fine, and if it didn't sell, fine.
How long has Grace Chapel owned that property? Approximately, it's fine.
15 years?
If you want to go off, we'll
Yeah.
go off.
Yeah. Just, and an approximation, so
Yeah,
over 10 years?
10,
Okay.
12 years.
Okay, and as far as the parking lot, you understand we're trying to negotiate an agreement for lease spots in the parking lot, and I can give my opinion. I think we're pretty close, but what's your, you kind of know where that stands. Just describe to the board where, we don't have it done tonight, but
Right. Church is a unique business. We don't have business hours. People don't die on a schedule, so you can't schedule a funeral. It just happens. Something like a marriage ceremony, people have their time that they want to have it. And so we can't say, okay, we're not using the building as is assumed. We're not using the building from Monday through Friday because, our events are Sunday morning when people come to a church service. So we really can't say that we will not need our parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon. Now, we don't often need it outside of regular hours, but when we do, we need it, and we're not willing to jeopardize our ability to hold these events in order to accomplish this lease. And on this point, we agree.
we agree.
Yeah,
Yes.
we agree. We don't have a problem there. Talk about the sticking point or not?
Sure.
Okay. The sticking point is George is asking for a long-term lease. We do not, although we have absolutely no plan to sell our primary property at 1 West Eagle Road, we don't want to encumber it, just as the people who are responsible for managing the property. We don't want to encumber it with a 20-year lease on the parking lot. And so that's the major sticking point. And there's several ways to bad expression, there's several ways to resolve that problem, and I'm confident that we will find one.
We've been working on it for a little while and we're down to 1 or 2 lines, I believe, in the agreement as to how long the term is, and we'll have Jack explain why he would like a longer term, but we think we can resolve that issue relatively quickly and hopefully have a signed agreement to present to the board next
A
week.
short-term lease may not carry as much weight with the board.
Understood.
For obvious reasons.
Yes. And, well, I guess from a short term, I mean, we were thinking 20 years, but short term, we're thinking in the 5 to 7 year and range for
Renewable
now.
with renewable options if they don't,
Yes,
that's to your benefit, in order to your benefit.
yes.
Well,
So that's what we're
obviously-
trying to work out that detail, and
So-
we understand the concerns.
And we're not going to be able to close the record on this
Correct.
because that's, could be a critical
Yes.
piece of evidence.
Understood.
So at the conclusion of the hearing, if
Right.
all else is done, we will leave the record on pending
Sure.
receipt of a signed lease.
Sure.
Okay.
That's fine. We were trying to get it done by tonight, but we do think the adjacent parking lots provide a lot of additional parking, especially in the daytime, when it would be used primarily as
Well,
an
we're going to
office.
hear out everything you have to say out. I'm just,
Yep.
and,
So-
hey, Paul,
Yeah.
do you have any other lease agreements for your parking lot?
We have one Wednesday afternoon, the farmer's market uses it. And they have already agreed that they won't use the parking lot on Wednesday afternoons.
Right, correct.
And what months does the farmer's market, I forget, I mean,
It's year-round now, apparently. Right? That's correct. Okay.
unless I swear you in, so.
Yeah.
we-
No, that's,
You can
I
call them as a witness,
apologize.
or they can confer, and not that we don't want to hear from you, but
Right.
we have a sworn witness in front of us, so, go ahead.
I'm done?
Yeah,
Well, wait,
and, well, they may have some questions for you, Paul.
Jess, do you have any questions?
I don't.
Ed?
So you were not here, yeah, you said you were already on the board, but were you around when they purchased the property, the Rock building?
Yes.
Do you remember what was there before?
It was a long time back. It was a Woolworths or Franklin Five and Dime, and then it became a family. They had three, basically Five and Dimes, or variety stores, or whatever you call them. They went out of business, and the Kangaroo U bought it. They had a concept that had something to do with children. I don't remember the details. I don't believe their business thrived. And they put it on the market. It was on the market for a couple years, if memory serves, and then we bought it.
Okay, do you know, they didn't have a lease agreement for parking?
Not with us.
And did you have to sign any type of lease agreement for use as the Rock?
I was at the church then. I was not on the board then. My assumption would be that since we had 66 spots, that worked, but that's just an assumption on my part.
Thank you, that's all I have.
So, do you have, you testified that there's one existing lease with the farmer's market.
That's correct.
What other types of events is your parking lot currently used for through other arrangements?
We had, and as a result of the pandemic, it's been used a couple times for a local business to have a company lunch. I don't remember the name of the business. They're home health care providers. They're down the street from us a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering about sort of ongoing, not one-off situations, but,
No, we don't, other than using the parking lot as a parking lot and one-off situations, that's it.
okay, so, craft shows,
I'm sorry?
outdoor craft shows?
I don't believe that we've had that.
Okay. Any agreements with nearby restaurants or any other businesses?
We allow them use of the parking lot.
Okay.
Okay, but the understanding is that if we put up the sign that says church parking only today, that they'll respect that, and to date they have.
And how would you educate those people who have been using it that now a certain number of the spaces are not going to be available for public use?
What I had planned in that area, but I'm of course open to your guidance on this matter, was that since our agreement, so to speak, with them says, sure, if there's a parking spot there, you can use it. That if they came and the lot was full, then they would go somewhere else. So we would, of course, notify them via email that we had
Notify whom? I'm sorry.
the people with whom we have given permission to use the lot, which is basically anybody in the area.
That's a verbal,
That's just a verbal,
so
yeah.
by not protesting, you've permitted them to use it, but there's no written obligation.
There's no written obligation, but as their neighbors in the community, we have told them, you are free to use our parking lot, but there's no documentation or anything like that, so.
And Paul, in your experience, on an average day, when you're not using it for dedicated church purposes, it's open, how many cars typically might be parked in a 66 space lot at any one moment? You know, daytime, morning, night, whatever.
It is pretty rare that the lot is more than half full. okay?
And we say pretty rare, so the times when it's more than half full, was that maybe one day a week or one day a month, or?
Well, I work a full-time job, so I'm only there. My son lives right next door, so I see stuff from that, and I'm very involved in the church, so I see things from that. But I would say it would be in the uncommon for it to be more than half, let's say maybe 3/4 full, okay?
I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Jesse?
No questions.
Thanks, Paul. And
Thank
thanks for
you.
volunteering.
Yes.
Or,
It's a big commitment.
oh,
The church. I'm not signing you up for anything else. Don't worry. Okay,
Thank
George?
you. Yes, let
Who's
me
next?
call Jack Vogel up.
Hi, how are you?
All right, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And your full name and the capacity in which you appear this evening?
Legal name is John Vogel. Go by Jack. Vogel, V as in Victor, Ogel.
Jack, you can, if you
I
can
don't
talk
care.
better, you can
Do
take
you guys
that off.
care?
You can take it off.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
And what capacity do you appear? What's your relationship to the applicant?
I'm a part owner of the company.
So partner, or is it a
Partner.
corporation or?
It's a S corporation,
S
so
corporation. So
managing,
you're a shareholder?
managing member. Yeah, shareholder. Yeah.
It's not an LLC, right?
I think it's, well, let me look.
So-
It is an LLC,
Oh, it's
so
an
it would be
LLC.
a
So
managing
you're the managing member of the
Yes.
I'm a
LLC?
manager. Yeah.
Yep. Those are the little legal nuances that,
I'm a CPA.
yes.
Unfortunately, I get this terminology beat into my head with the continuing education all the time.
Jack, just for the board's background, if you could, just give them a background of what the company does, what it plans to do, and then some of your personal background. And
Sure. Yeah, so the company, I started working with Wes in 2010. I was finishing my PhD at Drexel in finance, and he started the company, so I've been working with them since we had zero revenue. And we've grown it. We were remote from 2010 to 2014, and then Wes moved to Broomall. So we're currently operating part remote, part out of like his house, honestly. It's a small team. And we've now grown the company. So we're in financial services, so we manage money for individuals, both in like managed accounts, and then we actually run ETFs that are like publicly traded. And so we have been growing our business, and recently we are now running ETFs for like other companies. And
When
as
you
such,
say run the ETFs, what's that mean?
that means we run all the operations from like trading, fund admin, we outsource the fund admin accounting to US Bank, but I have to sign off on it, annoyingly. So as we are now running ETFs for other companies, we had to build out like our trading team a little bit. So we actually went from about a year ago, we had 8 employees, and now we have 15 in total. And I'll just give you a background of the breakdown there. So we have 15, and we hired those 7 additional for probably the next 4 years' growth. Like honestly, we front-loaded a lot of our growth from an employee standpoint. We don't
So how many total employees is it now?
15. 4
How many-
are remote,
Okay.
and then 11 would be in the office, probably 10. My wife helps out, so she's kind of just has
She on
a
the payroll?
little more flexible hours. Sorry, say that
Is she
again.
on payroll?
Yeah, she's on the
employee?
payroll. Yep.
Okay, so
Yeah.
she counts.
So in the office, which we are obviously under contract for, but need it to be zoned to be used as an office, we would have 11 full-time people probably there. We are flexible, so there's probably going to be a lot of days, like on Fridays, we might give people go work from home, right? So, but in general, the total amount of employees that we're looking at is 11, possibly 12 if our council decides that he wants to like use our office space that we now have. And again, as I mentioned, we don't plan on like hiring a ton more people in the near future because we actually like front-loaded a lot of our expansion. So that's a little bit about the company. From like a just business side, like our revenue, probably this year will end up being around like 10, 11 million. Next year, hopefully we hit like 15 million. So that's a little bit about the company. I'll answer questions. And then personally about me, so I grew up in Havertown. I grew up in Westgate Hills. Went to Cardinal O'Hara High School, but did everything, played Haverford travel soccer, Westgate baseball. I have 3 daughters, so I'm at Police Field 6 nights a week coaching softball, help coach Havertown soccer. And so that's just a little bit about me. Grew up, and I worked for the township in the rec department for 6 years when I was in high school and in college, helping run the summer camp programs at the playgrounds. So I ran the Westgate one for 4 years. So that's my personal background and company background.
And then just a little bit from a parking standpoint and the number of employees. I understand from conversations with you and Patrick that a lot of the current employees might not even be using cars to get into work. Can you just give the board some idea about that?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, like we would have 11 full-time that would be there. I live on Harrington Road, like I can throw a rock and hit Linwood's parking lot. So, I literally, huh?
No, you might hit my house.
So obviously, like, I'll probably end up walking a lot. I like to stay active, so it's like 0.8 of a mile, door to door. So that would be then, if me and my wife walked, we'd be looking at like 9 people in total. Now, if we drive, we're 1 car, so we're looking at like 10 cars max for parking here. And as I mentioned, just to highlight, we are like flexible, so at times people will work from home. So
As far as meetings and visitors, what do you typically see as far as people coming in to visit you or in your office? I mean,
we probably have, if I had to average it, we're talking like 2 people max a week. And it's like during business hours, like breakfast, lunchtime, because we're in financial services, so most people don't want to hang out with us at 6 o'clock at night.
so the typical use would be what, 8 to 5, 8 to 6? What's?
Yeah, it's 9 to 5. I mean, the stock market closes at 4.
Right.
Like, and technically we're done. We usually stay till 5 because there's like accounting stuff we have to finish up at the end of the night, but it's 9 to 5.
As far as that location, how do you guys stumble upon it, find out about it, whatever? How'd you find out, and why do you want to move in there?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like we had just hired decent number of people and we wanted to get like a real office space to have people go in. We've been looking and, we were looking in Broomall and Havertown, and that came up, and I think it's awesome because I'm going to be able to walk to work. But also I think it's a good location. Like there's restaurants around there. For the employees, we're going to be able to, it's a little bit bigger space, so we can give everyone a little more room, give them a little like space to relax. As you know, most people have gotten used to working from home, so having people come back in the office, they might want like a little more space. So we figured that would be it's a great location and a good building.
And you talked about future growth and plans. Were you talking 5 years out, 10 years out? Just give the board an idea, because I think there may be some issues, as you heard mentioned, about a long-term lease versus a short-term lease. If you could expand a little bit on what you see for a total employment in, say, 10 years down the road, or?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to be, I don't want to have to manage too many people, honestly. So, hopefully we stay under 25 employees in total. And actually, like as I mentioned, we have hired people remotely. We have clients like kind of all over the country. So like our last hire was just a woman down in Georgia. So, we're actually hiring like kind of around the country as we expand.
As far as changes in your need for parking going forward, other than a few additional employees or several additional employees, however you want to turn it, what do you envision holding, any sort of large meetings there or any blip that you see in the future as far as the needed parking for anything you're contemplating now?
No, I mean, we do generally have, so I also teach adjunct at Villanova, like the MBA equity class, 1 or 2 times a year. So we have a joint conference that we run with Villanova, and we actually do it on their campus. We would like to maybe do it. It's a 1-day event, and we usually have like 80 to 100 people. So we would think about using the space because it clearly can hold that many people. But again, that's like a 1-day, once-a-year event.
And that's something you could plan.
Yeah, we would
with
just
the
have to
church
plan
and-
that out and figure out how to facilitate that. But, and people are out of town, so a lot of times they're just Ubering anyway. But we don't have, we have one big event a year in the office, if we do, and it's our annual joint conference that we run with Villanova University.
That's all the questions I have for you, Jack. If the board has some, we'll let them address you.
Jesse?
Yep. I'm going to ask a non-parking related question.
Sure.
Are you aware that the subject property, 19 East Eagle, is a listed historic resource in the township?
I was not aware of that, no.
Glad I brought it up then. So that's not on the agenda to talk about. I just wanted to make you aware of that. So in case if you want to make any changes to the facade, you'll likely have to go before the historical commission. So that's
Gotcha.
another thing just to keep in mind. And so you can see that there's some other properties on that same block, like Brick and Brew and the Wiedemann architect that went through that process and you get a very nice outcome. So something to keep in mind. So if there's any facade changes that you're looking to make, and I know that's not that's not what's before us tonight, but I just wanted to make you aware.
Okay, yeah, I was not aware. The only facade change we were thinking of making was to make I guess Pat had mentioned this to me. Apparently, if you look the buildings next to us, so it's the architect building, the pub, the gym, and then Brick and Brew.
Yeah.
It would be to make like they have like a little roof out front, just make it like uniform all the way down. So
Right, yeah.
that was the only thing Pat was saying we could possibly do. He
Right.
must have looked into that somehow. I don't know why.
Yeah, and right, bringing the original historic character back I think would be great, and that would be
Yeah.
a welcome addition. So something I would encourage you guys to explore and work
Okay.
with the historic commission. Kelly and Margie can help you with that.
Okay.
Let's see. Is part of the negotiations on the parking, is there a discussion about how the spots would be labeled, the 30 spots that you guys are talking about? Is that up for discussion, or is it just kind of would be a first come, first serve?
It would just be, we would have use to the lot.
Okay, so there's not a plan to assign the
No.
specific spots, okay.
No, yeah, we're not trying to take the best spots or.
I don't have any
claim
other
them.
ones.
Bill?
I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Ed?
Is there going to be other witnesses?
No, this is it.
I'm not hearing the stuff I need to hear. I'm not hearing about your floor plan, how many parking spaces that the ordinance says you require, how many were available by, on the previous, the Rock, when they were using it. So are we?
We don't know what the ROC's requirements were. We know the ordinance says for meeting halls, it's 1 spot per every 60 square feet. As an office, it's 1 spot for every 200 square feet. So we think this use will reduce the number of parking spots required as well as the traffic coming in. So we didn't do a traffic study on that either.
But we don't have a floor plan that documents the square footage available.
We are not that, the square footage I know from what we've seen is 6,000 plus square feet. I don't know if, I can confer with Tyler and he.
Yeah, I'd like
he
to
knows
have
the
those
exact
numbers in
number.
front of me.
On the application, it states 6,000 plus square feet. So
No, but I
that's-
mean,
that's
the
why we
number of
went with
parking
that.
spots that that you would have to have, the number of parking spots that the existing use has required?
I have no idea.
I was a little shocked when I heard 180 people or 80 people. What was it? 80 to 100 people that would be attending an event there, so you have extra space. That was kind of shocking when I heard that compared to what the office space was. So I don't know that I have enough to act on without having what we normally get for changes. And we also had no testimony. Is this an existing, this use, is it approved under our Z3 as an office that this
Yes,
type allowed?
it can be approved as an office except for the parking requirements. There's no restrictions. There's several offices in that area right now. The Wiedemann Architects is the most recent one that came in and converted from a jewelry store to an office type facility.
Okay.
So it does fit the zoning requirements on everything as far as we understand, except for the number of parking spots. And we don't have an exact measurement of the interior of the building at this time to be able to give that exact number to you. It's somewhere over 30, we believe. Not much over 30. It's certainly not 40, but it's somewhere in that range.
And you don't know how many, your building layout, how much modification you're going to have to do to the inside?
It's all wide open like this, so there's no, I don't believe there are any structural type walls that need to be moved. It's all
Yeah,
an
no,
open
no
space. inside.
structural walls would be need to be moved.
George,
Essentially, it's split in half. They put up like a wall in the middle, and essentially we would use one half for offices.
Okay, but you're not, you don't have an idea of how many offices you're going to be constructing and how much you're going to have for a meeting room space, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, so I told you we probably are going to have 11 employees full time there, right? And so our trading team actually all sits around like they would prefer to sit in like a 4-person thing open. So we probably will build about 8 to 10 offices and build a conference room within the 1/2 of the existing building. Because it's right around 6,000 square feet.
George, and I looked at it and I have a general idea of where you are in terms of numbers of parking, but since we're not going to finish tonight needing the lease, can you also by the next hearing just provide a measurement of the interior and give us that exact square footage so we can do the exact math?
I think we can. I do have some information from some of the the prior zoning board meetings that I can mark. I only have one copy.
That's what I asked Kelly to go pull for me. So how about if we take a moment here, Bill?
Sure.
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
And you can try to pull it together, and we'll see if Kelly can find it. So, as soon as the light comes on.
We're good.
We'll resume the meeting of the Haverford Township Zoning Hearing Board of Thursday, December 2nd, 2021. Okay.
George, while we were off the record, we were provided copies of the plans for the site. I would suggest we mark those as A4 and have them admitted into the record. I would also note that I would take notice that the prior use before the Rock Kangaroo U, when they presented to this board, due to the use there, although you would think otherwise, did not require a parking variance. But due to the code, this one does, and assuming we're working off of 6,000 square feet, we're at a minimum of 30 parking spots that would be needed. But the board will need to look at these plans. Since we're not closing tonight, that'll give them the opportunity to review. Well,
This is 2 pages.
And I would point out the plans we just handed you for are actually the company that put the fire. So let me just hand that to questions. If you could just describe.
So A4 is 10 pages of drawings.
Yes, from the, I think from the engineering work the sprinkler company did. It essentially shows the front portion of the building is the open for-use space. The rear portion is a whole lot of bathroom space, and we believe that all meets the code presently as it's designed. And it also shows the basement, which is, so some of it's finished and some of it's a crawl space down below. So, you see if, Jack, if you can, just using the first page of what we marked as A4, just kind of describe to the board, if you can, how you plan to utilize that large amount of floor space there on the first floor of the building.
Yeah, the right half, I guess, if you're looking at it this way, over here, it's going to be mainly just offices, because that's currently has a lot of like dividers. So this is with clearly nothing built in it, right? Currently, there's just like a lot of random divider walls on this right side. So plan on just knocking them down and building like 10 offices and a conference room on that side. On the left side, that is very open. There's currently like a dividing wall, actually. Like in the, so again, this is not what the building looks like right now, right? But there's currently a dividing wall, I would say about 1/3 of the way from the bathrooms, right? And so that back area, we were going to have be more of like a lounge area for our employees, with like ping pong table, couches, stuff like that. The front area, we were going to actually keep open, if we had people over and wanted to present. It's a big room, so it's nice to like have some room to talk, but that was the plan that we had. We actually have contacted a designer to like do this, but we haven't paid anyone, because obviously if we don't get approved for the use, then that's a moot point.
So basically on the right-hand side of the diagram, you're thinking 10 single offices or maybe a few more if you can fit them in?
Yeah.
And the left side of the plan would be all open space? as
Mainly
it is
open
pretty
space.
much now. The
That's
bathrooms,
correct.
And the rear would be a lounge or a break room area.
Exactly.
For the employees.
Jack, where would you put your 4-person trading desk?
They might actually be in the front near like Darby Road, actually.
Oh, on which side?
Probably up
On
here.
the office space side?
Yeah. Not right in front of the window, but
Have, y'all haven't done anything to get, to actually measure the interior space and calculate the,
we've had a design team look at it. I mean, but these were broad measurements, right?
Right, so George, can we just by the 16th have
yes,
the actual measurements done?
yes.
Thank you.
So what Ed's
And we're
looking
waiting
for is,
also, yeah.
this is the precise square foot measurement. And under the, for considering the variance that was already
Yes.
approved, these are the number of spots that are currently
Right.
permitted. And this is how many we fall short of with this application. So we know what the gap is.
Yes.
So,
And we're kind of, yes, we're kind of going overkill with the number of spots, I based on 6,000, based on the employees.
That if you have testimony on the record here about whether the 80 to 100 person conference room is consistent with an office building,
Well,
not a meeting room.
yeah, and sorry, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, no.
Yeah, as I mentioned, that would be a once a year event, right? So this is not, we don't do this all the time, right? But you guys asked me on the record, and I'm not gonna lie.
No, I
so
appreciate that.
if you're doing it with Villanova, would people be coming up from Villanova?
You mean like, yeah, some Villanova professors would.
Could you?
Yeah, we could still just say we're gonna do it at Villanova and not do it there. But we thought it would be neat to have it on our premises.
You could also get a little school bus thing and bus them over from Villanova too, if you were parking trained. You wouldn't want them to come
Yeah.
and not be able to park. somewhere.
Exactly, I agree.
The variance doesn't just go to you, though, it goes with the property. So if you sell it in 2 years from now and there's this big meeting room space, and you commit that you're going to do this special things with Villanova, there's nothing on the record that requires any future landowner, property owner to do that. That's what we're trying to watch out for.
Understood.
We're not qualifying it as a meeting space. We're not asking for a variance as a meeting space. We're asking for it as an office.
Would you accept a condition that we would of a certain number of people to restrict it to?
I mean, it's currently zoned for 600 people. That's the occupancy that it's zoned for per the real estate listing. So,
Yeah, I don't know if that's in compliance with our zoning, so I don't know. I don't know where that comes from. Kelly, can you help us with that?
I actually can't. That is a fire code regulation, and I am not a
Gotcha.
fire code official, but I can certainly have the fire code official look into that if you'd like.
And we can dig into it and bring you back more detailed information.
Okay, but yeah, the fire code necessarily isn't based on the zoning code, it's based on the maximum occupancy
Right.
that they would allow.
And George, maybe you can have a discussion with your client prior to the next hearing to indicate whether or not they would agree to a certain number of dates within a calendar year in which they would exceed X number of people for that type of event. So that if you want to limit it to one, or say, I want the flexibility to two, I'm not suggesting one thing or the other, but I think the board would want to hear some sort of acceptance in terms of limitations, so that whether it's for this entity or a future entity in that space, that it can't, if they were to leave that property and somebody else take over it, that all of a sudden we're not having 80 to 100 people in there more than once a year, more than twice a year, something like that. And that can be conditioned, and that condition would also run with the property.
Sure. That's something we'd certainly be willing to do, I believe. That was all the questions I had for Jack. If you all have any more.
I have a question.
You already asked your questions right there. Let's, are you done, Ed?
Yes.
Yes.
You testified that you currently have 4 employees that are remote. Is that, are those 4 employees all out of state, presumably permanently?
yeah, so we have one in Pittsburgh area. One who currently lives here is moving back to Canada in 2 weeks, so I classify them as remote. One's in Puerto Rico and one's in Georgia.
Okay, thank you. And then these plans that we have, Exhibit A4, show a basement space. What do you intend to use that for?
We're just gonna put like gym equipment for employees down there.
Okay, so that will be employee-only space.
Oh, yeah, we weren't.
And would you accept that as a restriction, should this board decide to approve this? That space would only be for employee use?
Yeah, that's fine.
And you have no intention to rent out any portion of this space to a different tenant? It's
Not
gonna be
right
one
now.
single tenant,
No, we don't have any intention right now.
and you would accept that as a condition?
We would. I do know there were things drawn up prior for like splitting it in two that were, but yeah, I mean, as of right now, we don't have any plans on doing it.
And then what is the use of the alleyway that's adjacent to the building right now? Is it just rear access?
I
You know?
absolutely no clue.
We're wondering that ourselves. We're waiting for the survey to come
Got
back.
it.
Yeah.
I have no other questions.
But then, George, just let me ask you this, because I don't want to waste your time or the board's time in terms of the survey and in terms of the other item asked. Is December 16th realistic, or would you need to, would you prefer January in order to have the extra time to have that provided?
We're trying to close this year. I think the closing date on the agreement's the 15th. So we would like to shoot for the 16th if that's possible, and we'll do what we can to get everything done.
Just wanted to
Sure.
throw that out there.
Understood.
Do you have anything else on the agenda? All right. I have no additional questions. Anybody else? All good? Okay. Thanks, Jack.
Yep.
We appreciate your time tonight, and just wanted to, again, reemphasize that we're looking at the lease more as a Band-Aid, because we think all the public parking spots in that area meet the requirements of the zoning code anyway. So I don't know how you count them up, or if it's our job to count them up, but there are, close to, I think, 80 to 90 public parking spots available. And as I understand the ordinances, they can be shared by the businesses in the area. So we're looking at the lease, parking lot lease, more as a way of helping the parking situation in that area, which we all know is terrible. And, the ordinances probably realistically need to be changed, because everybody moving in there is needing to get exceptions. The Brick and Brew lease the Bryn Mawr Bank parking lot. I know Wiedemann Architects is leasing some parking lots in the old township building directly from the township. I know there are some leased parking spots in the Oakmont parking lot that are being leased directly from the township. So, that whole area is very sparse in parking. So we're trying to accommodate that known practical reality by entering into the lease with Grace Chapel, which we think we should have worked out, and we'll be able to bring back to you next time the board convenes. As far as that, I have a list of what other things have been requested. We'll get them back to you, and unless you all have any questions for me, I think we're finished for the night.
No, all requests been expressed? Yes? Jess?
I just want to make sure, so the examples you just testified to, are you aware to what extent those agreements provide for assured parking for those other property owners as opposed to just public parking?
I am somewhat familiar because I was involved in the sale of the Oakmont to the Brick and Brew. I believe they have I don't quote me on the exact number of years, but they have a very long lease to lease all the Bryn Mawr Trust parking spots in the evenings when Bryn Mawr is not open, which is essentially from 4 o'clock on. I think I'm going off of memory again, I apologize if I'm wrong, but I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of the high 20s to low 30s parking spots in that facility. The other ones, I understand that the town, through the police department, they're leasing spots in the other parking lots. I know Wiedemann Architects has several spots leased there, and in the other Oakmont parking lot, there are several spots leased there to businesses directly, as opposed to metered parking. I'm not sure of the exact details, though.
Okay.
Anything else, Bill? Ed?
No,
Yes? All right.
No.
So we're clear. We should be quicker and
Hopefully we'll be in and out
concise
quickly
that
next.
night.
Yes.
So, all right. With that, we'll continue this case to our December 16th hearing.
Thank you.
Are we done discussing that? Are we ready to move forward? Or do you guys want to talk more?
we can go off the record for a little bit. I have to go run to the restroom anyhow.
Okay, we'll go off the record. Okay, Mr. Malone.
Yes, Mr. Kane, members of the board, as you know, we had an appeal from a decision of this board from the Haverford Township Free Library Association. There have been some negotiations that have taken place to see if there was any possibility of resolution of this matter with both counsel for the library and counsel for the township, as they had filed to intervene in that appeal. That appeal is pending in the Court of Common Pleas of Delaware County. For clarity and for the record, this board did meet in executive session to discuss some of the issues associated with that appeal and the possibility of resolution. But in order to act on the possible resolution, we have to address this in a public setting, which is where we are now. Because this is a matter in litigation, we do not have to do a separate service at this point. Service or separate notice, I'm sorry, at this point. So I think we're in a position that during our discussions and in executive session, everyone's been brought up to speed with regard to the settlement proposal that came from those discussions. And with that, I'll pass it over to Mr. Rhodes.
I would like to make a motion to vote to approve the proposed settlement stipulation of the litigation matter that's currently before the Court of Common Pleas, subject to the conditions set forth in the proposed settlement stipulation, including, among other terms, one, that the applicant shall, prior to December 16, 2021, provide the revised construction plans that are incorporated in the stipulation that show a pullback of the outer walls of the second-story addition, except along party walls. Two, that parking and signage as specified in the stipulation shall be revised so as to provide additional on-site parking exclusive to library use. Three, as provided in the stipulation, additional drop box locations shall be provided at a minimum at 2 new locations within the township that are not presently served by existing drop boxes. Subject to those conditions, I would authorize further the chairman to sign on behalf of this board the final stipulation, including any non-material changes to the terms of the settlement, including review of the revised construction plans. If there are any material changes to what we've reviewed and discussed, then the matter shall be brought back before this board at our next scheduled meeting on December 16, 2021.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
Yes, just reiterate, the things that you read on the record there, was everything that was contained in the settlement agreement?
Those are all in the stipulated settlement draft. There's some additional elements and conditions in there or terms of the stipulated settlement, but those are some of the items that relate to, the drop box, the pullback of the walls, the parking and signage. They go into more detail, and there's some other technical elements in that, but I think that's
Yeah, it just concerns me that there was a list of things. I thought we weren't going to read it at all. Now I don't want, no, the question is whether or not everything I read in the stipulated agreement is what we're voting on, or just those limited the conditions that you added there.
I can add into that. There's signage issues in terms of being electronic. There's some legalese in terms of if all three parties agree to a settlement that a certain document.
Why are we even going down this rabbit hole? I mean, we can't read the whole thing because it's still the subject of negotiation, right? And the negotiation discussions are confidential, which is why we did it in executive section. I probably should have interrupted Bill when he was going into any detail, but it seemed broad enough that I didn't do that. It didn't touch on specifics and therefore interfere with our ability to further negotiate if that need arises. So, I mean, you're walking a tightrope, Bill, but.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. I mean, we can just say that negotiations took place with regard to a number of items, including things that were addressed at the underlying hearings before the board, including some screening issues. But a lot of the legalese issues are just technical requirements, which is really where I was going with this in terms of if a settlement's approved, what you have to do with the Court of Common Pleas, who retains jurisdiction down the road, should there be any violation of the settlement agreement and things of that nature.
Yeah, but it doesn't, he did not say the thing that would make me change my vote. And I know why he can't say it, but does it? It's very.
Why are we discussing it?
Yeah, so just to be clear, that when we're voting on this, we're voting on the draft settlement document that we all had an opportunity to look at, and not necessarily the list of conditions that were just read into the record.
Correct, and my motion, I think, says those were just several of the ones that, but that we are approving this draft. Unfortunately, it's not in perfectly final form, and we don't know if the township commissioners will approve it in the exact same form, so the idea is
Yeah,
to,
you're going down a rabbit hole again, for me anyhow, is that now it sounds like there's, we talked about, I believe, was that we would have some ability to do minor word changes and not
Right.
major ones.
right.
And
so
I
if there
think
were-
that's,
if
I
the-
think that's why Mr. Rhodes indicated that you would authorize Mr. Kane to sign, provided that there are no material changes. If it's simply a matter of tweaking some language, which does not change the essential terms of the proposed settlement.
Okay.
Any other discussion? So there's a motion and a second. I'll call a roll on this one. Jess, how do you vote?
I agree with the motion.
Ed?
I agree, contingent on being the draft that we looked at.
What do you think's gonna happen?
We go off the
If you're
record?
concerned,
We go off the record? Tell me.
sure, we can go off the record. Off the record? Sorry, Jeff.
We're on the record.
All right, so Ed, how do you vote?
I vote in favor.
Jesse?
I agree with the motion.
And so do I. So that's five. And Bill, you made the motion.
Yes, I made the motion. I approve.
With that, I will communicate with counsel for the library, counsel for the township, make some minor adjustments that are really technical, that I see. And then we'll see where we stand after the Board of Commissioners meets on, next Monday.
Okay. With that, any other matters? Minutes, anything? No?
No minutes. Mr. Clark was here last meeting, and I've kind of been zoning-wise more tied up with this than anything else.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned.